Okay, good afternoon, grade 12 learners. Welcome at this afternoon session of English First Additional Language. On Monday, you write your paper 1, and we thought it would be a good idea to help you, to guide you in the sense as how should you answer the question paper, how are you going to tackle the paper. So to help us, I brought along March this year's 2014 supplementary exam, and I'm going to go through that and show you certain things. First of all, when you get your question paper, the most important thing is that you read the instructions very carefully, because there's a purpose why they are given to you. Now, initially, they just tell you all the familiar information, that you have 3 sections, a comprehension section, the summary, and the language, just as you used to get during the course of the year. Then you have to remember, you have to try and answer all the questions. And at every question, you're also going to get instructions, and you have to remember to read all those instructions as well. And then remember the markers at the end of the year. It's a lot of scripts that they have to mark, and sometimes they get very tired. So you have to structure your answer script in such a way and answer your questions in such a way that it's easy for them to find the information and to mark it. And that's why they ask you to start each section on a new page. Then as well, leave a line open between your answers. It makes marking just so much easier. Then number your answers correctly, exactly the same as they are numbered on the question paper. Don't differ, don't change. If they number it an A, you also number it an A. If they number it 1.3.1, you also number it 1.3.1. And then, since it's the language paper, you have to pay attention to spelling and sentence construction. Although you are not penalized for it in the comprehension and the summary part really, it is important. And then write neatly and legibly. It's difficult to figure out what a learner is trying to say if we can't read what they are writing. And then just to help you a little bit, for those of you who struggle with time and you do not know if you're going to get finished in time within the 2 hours time allocated to the paper, a bit of advice. For the comprehension test, I would advise you, if you get your question paper, take time to read through the comprehension test. If you spend about 50 minutes of your 2 hours on the comprehension test, then for the summary, it's a short passage, it's not that long, so I would advise you to spend about 30 minutes on the summary. And then for the language section, that's going to contain 3 or 4 questions, I would advise you to spend the last 40 minutes. If you finish a little bit faster with the comprehension test, you're not going to use the full 50 minutes, then it just gives you extra time to go through your answers and see that you did not make unnecessary mistakes. And that's the instructions. And that's the first thing you're going to read through when you are going to start answering your question paper on Monday. Good. Now, the first section is comprehension. Now, it's difficult to teach comprehension. That's something that needs to be practiced. And I believe that you've practiced it well during the course of the year. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a few tips, just a quick revision on what you have to remember when answering a comprehension test. I brought along a few slides that I would like to show to you, and use this to quickly go through the comprehension test and what's important, what we should remember. Now, a reading comprehension, the purpose is of a reading comprehension, the approach that we have to follow is we have to decode the information to see if we understand what this written text is. If there's visual aspects as well, what's the message behind it? Do we understand what we read? Now, it is the power of the mind to take the information in and to understand it fully. The skills one acquire is not only useful for English, but it's also something that you're going to use in all your other subjects. And that's also skills that we acquire and that we need for life. Okay, now the basic strategies for Monday when you are going to answer your comprehension section, and it's an unknown text because you haven't seen it before. We call it previewing. Now, first of all, just skim through the passage. Skimming, means you do not read every single word. You just let your eye quickly follow the lines and see, so that pick up words here and there, so that you can see what it is about, get an idea what it is about. Then you read the title. Now, the title of the passage is important because it also gives you a hint about what the passage is about and perhaps what the intention of the writer was when he wrote this specific passage. Okay, now we've skimmed through the passage, we looked at the title of the passage, then also go and take a look at the name of the author, because that might also give you an idea about the era, the style, or the subject matter, if it is somebody familiar. Then also look for other clues that they might have added to the comprehension test. There might be subheadings, there might be footnotes. He might tell you where they might tell you where the text comes from, if it's a magazine article, a newspaper article, because that determines the tone in which it was written, the register, and it also gives you valuable information. Then we get to the passage. Remember now, so far, you've opened your question paper at the comprehension, you quickly skimmed through the passage, you looked at the title to get an idea what the gist of the passage is about. Then you looked at other visual clues. You looked at who the writer is, you looked at footnotes, if there are any, from where it came from, if it was a magazine article, a newspaper article, and perhaps if there are any other visual clues included in this passage. Now, you're ready to read through the passage. Ask questions while you are reading. The first time that you read, you're only reading to get an idea what the passage is about. So ask questions. What's the purpose? What was the intention of and the meaning of this text? Why was it written in the first place? Questions you should ask. Who's the narrator and who's the audience? Now, by now you know that the narrator is the teller, the storyteller, the person who's talking to you while you are reading, and the audience, for whom was it intended? For whom did this writer intend it to read? Remember, when they wrote it, it wasn't with the purpose that it was going to be asked as a comprehension passage in a language question paper. So that's something important you need to ask. And then also, where does the text come from? This will influence the subject matter and the style of the text. Then also, what is the passage about? Okay, just in general, what is it about? What is the author's intention in writing this passage? Because that will influence the style. Now, what I mean by that is the intention. Was it to entertain? Was it to inform? Was it to explain something? Was it to give a critical comment on something that has happened? So that's the intention. What was the intention of the writer when he wrote this passage? Now, when does it take place? And that's normally in literature we talk about the setting. But if you read through the passage, can you get an idea what's the setting? Where is this happening? And more or less at what time is it taking place? Then, how does the author communicate the message? This message that he has, that you are reading, how does he communicate it? What language techniques does he use? His style, his tone, his register, what is used. Remember, register and tone. Tone is the emotion that they convey with what they write. It's almost like an atmosphere that they create. And register is it more formal? Is it more informal? Good. Now you've read through the passage once, so you have a good idea what the passage is about. Then it will be a good idea if you find the main ideas in the passage. And that's normally divided into the paragraphs. Go and take a look. What's the main idea in every paragraph? Now remember, a passage or a text will normally be divided into an introduction, the development, the body, and then the conclusion. Now find the main idea by looking at each paragraph. Read the paragraph and ask, what should I know? If you have to summarize that paragraph in one line, what is it? That's the main idea. Each paragraph normally has one main idea, and then that idea is further developed and to understand the passage. Now you've read through the passage, you know more or less what it's about. You went and you looked at every paragraph to find the main idea. And now you go through the questions. You read through the questions because that will give you a clue where in the passage, in which paragraph will you find the answer. It's important to understand that the questions on the text, as much as you have to understand the questions as much as you have to understand the text that you are reading. If you don't understand the question, it will be difficult to find the answer. If you don't understand what the question requires from you, in other words, what you have to do, then you won't be able to answer the question. So later on we will look at a few tips, a few hints that might help you with that. Each question contains an instruction. In other words, a verb. Normally what you have to do, identify, list, explain, describe, give a reason. So there's a verb, an instruction involved. Now, my advice to you is when you read through the questions, underline or draw a circle around that verb, because that tells you what you should do, how you have to answer the question, and the order in which it has to be done. Then, if you have, normally that instruction is at the beginning of the question. Then you read on, read the whole question, because sometimes there's valuable information at the very end of the question. Look for key words, underline words like why, words like what, words like how. Look at words like that, because that will also give you an idea of what's expected of you. Now, here's a list of the verbs, and I'm sure that your teachers have given you notes and have already taught this to you, but I'm just quickly going to give you the list. We're just quickly going to run through it. Now, if they were ever to ask you, analyze something, that means you discuss the main ideas and why it is important. You basically pull it apart. Comment. If you comment on something, you discuss the what is it? And then you discuss the why. You criticize and you explain it. Always first, what is it about in your own words? And then you go and look at why do they say that? And then you answer the question if they comment. Normally they give a statement and then they put comment at the end. So then look at the statement. Then you say in your own words, what does that statement, what does it mean? How do you understand it? And then you try and figure it out. Why did they put, what does it mean? Why did they add it here? Then compare is a very important question. You have to remember, if you compare two things or two people or two actions, that you have to look at what is the same and what is different. Define, that means you give a definition. Accurately distinguish what is it not. So if I ask you to define something that was in the passage, you have to tell me what is it. If I've read your definition, I should know what it is. Describe means you have to give detail. You have to include detail on an account. Discuss, that means you have to argue. And ultimately you have to say, do you agree or do you disagree with the statement? Evaluate goes to the worth. Do you believe in it? Is it important? Is it the truth? Explain. There you tell me, interpret it. What do you understand under it? And then you normally give reasons. Remember, reasons are the answer to the question why. So if you give reasons, then you basically answer the question why. I always tell the learners that after you've written down your answer, look at what you've written and then ask the question why. If that answer to why isn't in there, it means you didn't completely answer the question. You have to add, you have to answer that why. That is when you explain something. Okay, illustrate means you have to basically paint a picture with words. You have to give examples. You have to make it clear to a person. Interpret, that means you take the information that they give to you, you take the knowledge you have, and then you interpret it, you make it, you give your own ideas, you use your own ideas and your own examples. Mention is very briefly, you're not going to have a long discussion or explanation or a description on it. Outline means that is also brief, but you're not going to give the detail, you're just going to give the main ideas in the correct order. State, you give a description of the most important aspects of the topic. They tend to ask, lately in the comprehension tests, they ask state 2 points, state 2 reasons. So that just means you give a description of the most important aspect of the topic that they ask about. Synthesize means you have to integrate the information and draw conclusions. In other words, there might be a little bit of information in the beginning, then there might be some in the middle, and there might be some in the end. Then you have to take all of it, you have to put it together, and you might have to draw your own conclusion. And then tabulate will be when they ask you to draw a table, and you have to fill in what is needed, the particulars that is needed. So that's just in short the words. Now, I'm not going to go on with the levels of question of the Barrett's taxonomy. I'm just quickly going to run through this. But you need to know that 40% of the comprehension questions that they're going to ask you, the answers are in the passage. You just have to go and search for it. You will find it there. You don't even have to really interpret it. You can just write it, the answer down. Then you're going to get 40% questions where you have to interpret. In other words, you have to take a little bit of the knowledge you have. What do you understand? What does the word mean? You have to bring your own meaning to it as well. And that you will incorporate that in your answer. Questions like true or false. Questions where you have multiple choice. Questions where they ask you to explain something in your own words. That's 40%. And that's already 80% of the questions. And then you get this last bit of 20% questions. And that we call level 4 and 5 questions. And those are normally at the end of the comprehension test. And that's where they will ask you, in your opinion, do you think, do you agree with the writer? And that is where you evaluate something. Now, what's important? Tips on answering comprehension exercises. Now, I know most of you most probably know this already, but it's just a reminder because sometimes when you are writing your final exam, you're a little bit nervous and stressed and you might forget. Remember to answer in full sentences. They give it as an instruction in the comprehension test as well. Answer in full sentences. Unless they ask you to quote a phrase or to write down one word, answer in full, complete sentences. Then, sentences shouldn't begin with conjunctions. Don't start an answer with because or and or but. You will say, he says this because. Always add something to the beginning. Then don't use abbreviations and symbols. For example, the and. Write it out in full. Then the next one, the numbering is very important. The numbers in your answer should definitely correspond exactly the same as to the numbers on the questions. Then the last, use the mark allocation that's given to every question as a guideline on how much you need to write. So avoid answer questions in clear, simple language. Don't try and be impressed. This is not creative writing. The purpose is, do you understand the passage that you've read? Avoid using big words, long-winded ways of saying things, because it wastes time and sometimes the meaning goes lost. The marker does not understand what you're trying to say. Then with that, I also want to say to just add the first two to bring it together. If a question counts 3 marks, if they allocated 3 marks to a question, you have to remember, you have to write enough that's worth 3 marks. You have to state 3 facts, you have to give 3 reasons, you have to give 3 examples, you have to elaborate so that it is enough for 3 marks. If you write a short sentence of 4 words, you are not going to get 3 marks. Then remember the quoting part. When they ask you to quote from the text, remember to enclose it in inverted commas because that indicates that it's a quote. And then also remember, you don't have to quote the full sentence or the whole paragraph. You look for the key words or the key phrase or the key clause that answers the question or that proves the question, and then you quote that. But then it's also important to remember you can't just quote the beginning of the sentence, put ellipses and then the end of the sentence, because then it means what's important, the middle, the key word that proves the answer is not there. Then the last thing I want to say about quoting is, remember your quote, what you write down as a quote, has to look exactly the same as what it is in the passage. So in other words, if they use a capital letter, you're going to use a capital letter. If they're going to put a comma, you're also going to put a comma. Be careful of copying incorrectly, because if you copy it incorrectly, it's considered to be a spelling mistake and then it's not exactly the same. So remember, your quote has to be exactly the same as it appears in the passage. Then if a question asks for 1 word, write down 1 word. Don't write down 2 words or 3 words, because the marker is only going to mark the first word. It doesn't matter if the second or the third word is the correct word. Use your own words unless they ask you to quote. That's a specific instruction. You cannot just lift passages or pieces or sentences from the passage and just write it down. You have to try and change it up a little bit, especially when they ask you in your own words. Use your own words, because then there are key phrases in the passage that they want to see. Do you understand what it means? Can you put it in your own words? Keep the tense of your answer the same as the tense of the question. So if the question is asked in the present tense, your answer will be in the present tense. And then if you are providing a synonym or an antonym for a word in the passage, remember it should be the same. So for example, if they say give a word in the past tense, your word will be in the past tense. If they use the plural, your answer will be in the plural. If they give a noun, your answer will be in the form of a noun. Then when you've finished answering your questions, do it question by question. Don't wait and answer all the questions first. If you finished writing down your answer, proofread the answer to make sure that you didn't make any unnecessary mistake. And that, write clearly and neatly, as I've said, and as they ask in the instructions. And that brings us to the end of the comprehension test. I hope that this will be helpful and that it will guide you when you answer your comprehension test. Remember that you can't really practice the comprehension test in the sense that you don't know what the passage is going to be that they're going to ask. So those are just a few tips. If you spend time in reading the passage, look at the clues, the titles, look at the questions, look at the instruction words that they give you, then that will be helpful. And I'm sure that you will write good answers for that. Just an example of the comprehension, what I said, that look for the instruction word. This is we're not going to do the question paper, I just want to show you. Here the first question they ask, quote one word. That's the instruction. Okay, so that tells you what you have to do. Then you go on. A word that paragraph 2 is a clue, so you know where to go and look for it. How organic food is produced. So that is the key word that you have to go and look for, how organic food is produced. Here we have state. That's the instruction. Then they say 2 ways. So you have to mention 2 ways, 2 things a modern farmer can produce fat, healthy animals. Then if they say in question 1.4, refer to paragraph 5. So now you know, go and reread paragraph 5. What do you have to look for in paragraph 5? Explain, and then you have why. And now remember we said why indicates reasons. Why indicates reasons. So if you go and read paragraph 5, you have to go and look for reasons why researchers started looking at alternative methods of farming. And you have to explain those reasons. So true or false questions, very important. And then give a reason for your answer. Now, when we get to the true and false questions, I just quickly want to talk to you about how the questions are marked at the end of the year. It's a little bit different this year than it was previously. Previous years, you got credited for true or false. So if the answer to this question was true and the reason, and you wrote down true, you got a mark for true. It doesn't matter if the reason was wrong. But now, you're not going to get a mark for true, even if true is right. You're only going to get a mark for the reason. So be careful of just writing down true or false. You have to go and look at the reason and make sure that your reason is right to get the marks for the comprehension test. The same with fact and opinion. You're not going to get a mark for fact. You're not going to get a mark for opinion. You're going to get a mark for the substantiation. In other words, why do you say it's a fact? Why do you say it's an opinion? The same with yes or no. Do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Yes or no does not count a mark. You're not going to get awarded a mark. They look at the substantiation, the explanation. If it's reasonable, if it's well substantiated, you're going to get full credit. If it's more or less true, but there's a little bit of lacking, it's a bit vague, you're only going to get half of the marks. And if it's too vague, if it doesn't make sense, you're not going to be credited. So be careful for questions like that, especially questions that ask, do you think, in your opinion, true or false, and a fact and opinion. Okay, then the next section that you're normally going to get in the comprehension, in the question paper is the summary. Now, I believe that you know how to do a summary. I'm just going to again give you a few tips that might help you when you do the summary. You have to remember that although they ask you to write the summary, use your own words as far as possible, that you have to remember that it is only the facts mentioned in this passage. You cannot give your opinion on the facts. That's not going to get you marks. The second thing you have to remember about the summary is that you have to read your instruction question very carefully. Because in that instruction, they give you a clue as to what facts you have to go and identify, what facts you have to be on the lookout for. Now, to use this as an example, they say you are concerned that South Africa will eventually be without water. Prepare a talk for learners at your school on how to save water. So what facts are you going to look for? Anything that you can do, a guide, a tip that will tell you on how to save water. What you can do to save water, what you should not do to waste water. And that will be the fact to answer this question. Now, when you answer the summary, again, before you can identify any fact, you need to know what is written in this passage. So my advice to you is, first go and read the passage. Put down your pen, put down your pencil, just read the passage to get an idea what information it contains. Then, after you've read it once, then you go back and you remember, we said the question is how to save water. Prepare a talk for learners at your school on how to save water. So, then you're going to read it again. And as you read now, you go and look for any information that answers the question how to save water. And if you get that information, you underline it or you highlight it, you mark it. And you go through the whole passage until you've underlined all the facts that tells you what you can do to save water. Now, after you've done it once, you should have identified at least 7 facts because that's the instruction. They say list 7 points in full sentences using no more than 70 words. So you should have at least 7 facts. So what do you do then? You go and you do a rough draft. You write in your exam script, you write what you've underlined. You put it in full sentences. Try to put it in your own words. Do not just copy from the passage. For example, here is one fact. A simple thing like closing the tap while you are brushing your teeth or taking a shower instead of filling a tub with water can make an enormous difference. That tells you what can you do to save water. Close the tap while you're brushing your teeth. Close the tap while you are taking a shower. So, now that is a fact. You can't just copy it exactly like that. While you are brushing your teeth. Okay, why do I say you can't just copy it like that? You will be credited. You will get that. For example, it's the first fact. So you have 1 mark. You scored a mark for the fact. You identified the fact correctly. But remember, ultimately, the summary counts 10 marks. How are the marks allocated? 7 marks for facts, 3 marks for language. Now, as we mark the summary, if we see this is a direct quote, in other words, it's lifted, it is exactly the same as in the passage. Nothing was changed. What do? We indicate it is a quote. And in the end, if you've identified you had 6 out of 7 for your facts, and even if you only had 1 quote, 1 direct quote, you cannot score more than 1 out of 3 for language. And I think that is unnecessary. If you did well and you almost identified all the facts, you had 6 out of 7, you can get the maximum 3 out of 3 for facts. And that gives you 9 out of 10. So what I'm suggesting and what I'm advising you to do is, if you underlined, you remember you read the passage, then you read it again, and you underlined everything that tells you what you should do on how to save water. Then I said, do a rough draft of your summary. Go and write down the facts, but try and change it a little bit. Now, if I look at this one, a simple thing like closing the tap while you are brushing your teeth. How can we change it so that it's not a direct quote? I will say, close the tap while you brush your teeth. The meaning is exactly the same, but I changed the words. I left out some words. I changed closing to close. While you are brushing your teeth, while you brush your teeth. So it's not exactly the same, but the meaning, the essence is still the same. If you do that, you don't have to rewrite everything in your own words. You don't have to use all of the words, your own words. But just by changing it a little bit, then it means it's not a direct quote and you won't be penalized in the end. So that's my advice to you. When you are doing the summary, remember, when you identified the facts, go take your exam book in pencil or in pen, then write all the 7 facts that you've identified. Write them in full sentences. Now that's my number 1, number 2, number 3, and I've gone up to number 7. Then you have to go and you literally have to go and count the number of words you've used. Because if you used more than 70 words, then you are in trouble. Then you have to go back and see, what can I leave out? What don't I need to make it less so that you are within the word count? A few tips that I can give you to prevent that after you've written your 7 facts and you see that you've used more than 70 words. The first thing that you can do is go and take a look at examples. Examples explain a fact. Examples aren't a fact. So normally go and look at what's written before the example that they give you, and that will be the fact. So leave out examples. Then the second thing, repetition. Be careful of repeating things. Normally, sometimes in a passage, they mention a fact at the beginning. Later on, they repeat it, but just in a different way. And what learners sometimes tend to do, they write it down as a fact again. So that's what you have to be on the lookout. Remember examples. Examples aren't facts. Repetition. Be careful of repetition because that's also unnecessary. And then use short, full sentences. Now, another tip I can give you is, if you have and, you have something and something. Normally that and introduces the second fact. So be careful because they ask you to write down only one fact in a sentence. It's part of the instructions. There it is. Write down 1 point per sentence, 1 fact per sentence. So what happens if you have and? You wrote something, you thought this was a fact, and the next one. If this first one is wrong, you identified it incorrectly, it isn't a fact, or perhaps it's a repetition of something else that you've already mentioned, they don't even read the rest because then it's wrong. They only look at the first fact. So if you mention 2 facts in one sentence, only the first fact can be credited. And if it's wrong, then you lose the mark. So my advice to you is, if you have an and is a conjunction, split it up. Put a full stop and start that one in the next sentence. And that will also help you, especially when you struggle to identify 7 facts. Normally learners tend to string facts together in one sentence. But if you get and, then it means you can split it up into a second fact. Another bit of advice that I encountered or that I can give you with the summary. When you write the summary, be careful of writing only half of the fact. There's a reason why they give you 70 words. Sometimes learners summarize it in 39 or 40 words. They have half of the facts. If you only write down half of the fact, you're not going to be credited for the fact. So if you finished writing your rough draft, your 7 facts in your own words, changing it so that it's not a direct quote anymore, and you've counted your words, and you see, oh, I only used 42 words, don't give yourself a pat on the shoulder yet and think you are very clever in summarizing it in so few words. Go back and see, didn't I leave out something important? Did I identify or write down the whole fact? I always tell the learners, remember, there's a reason why they give you 70 words to use. And that's the summary. I hope that will be helpful. The summary is an easy way to score marks if you identify the facts correctly. But unfortunately, learners do not always do that well in the summary because they misidentify facts. So remember what I said. Go and look at the instruction. The instruction tells you what facts you have to look for. There might be other facts in the passage as well, but not facts that's relevant to this question, to this topic. So remember that. Keep that in mind. I always tell the learners, if you've written down something, then you ask yourself, does this tell me how to save water? And if the answer is no, then you know it's not a fact. You are wasting words. For example, if they say, if each South African performed a positive action every day, our rivers and streams would benefit. Is that a fact? Does that sentence tell you how you can save water? What can you do to save water? If each South African performed a positive action, our rivers and streams would benefit. It doesn't tell me what to do. It just tells me I should do something, but it doesn't tell me what to do in order to save the water. So that won't be a fact. So do that with everything that you've identified. Underline it. Write it down in your own words. Change it a little bit like I showed you here so that it's not a direct quote. And after you've done that, then you ask yourself, does this tell me how to save water? What should I do to save water? And if it doesn't, then it means it's not a fact. You are wasting a mark. Go and take a look. There has to be another fact that you did not pick up on. And that's the summary. So the comprehension and the summary involves a little bit of reading. So remember what I said, with the comprehension and the summary, do not attempt to answer the question immediately. Sometimes we have learners who start writing down answers without even reading the passages. Remember, skim the passage, look at the title because it gives you an idea, look for other clues like visuals, like the name of the writer, subheadings, from what source has this passage been taken, this text been taken, that provide you clues. Then go and look at every paragraph. What is the main idea in every paragraph? Because that will also help you to identify later on the question, where will you find the answer? Then you go and read the questions, go and underline the instruction word, quote, state, explain, identify, underline that and look for other clues. Then you go back and you can read the passage again. And because then you have an idea what the questions are and you can start looking for answers. When you're writing down your answers, remember short, full sentences, unless they ask you to write down only one word. If they ask you to write down one word, remember only one word, not 3 words. And then the last thing, quote. If they ask you to quote, remember the inverted commas, and what you write down, your quote, should look exactly the same, be exactly the same as it is in the passage. And always, after everything that you write down, after every answer, go back, read your answer to see, didn't you by any chance make an unnecessary mistake? The same applies for the summary. Go read the instruction. Look for the question that you have to answer. Do you have to look for disadvantages? Do you have to look for how you should do something? Do you have to look for tips? Do you have to look for disadvantages? Go and look at the instruction because that identifies the facts that you will have to identify. Then you go and you read the passage. Just read it once. It's a short text. You've seen that the texts are very short for the summary. Read through it once so that you have an idea. Then you take your pen or your pencil. You read it a second time and you underline all the facts that you've identified. And number them so that you know if you have 7 facts. After you've underlined and identified your facts, you go and you write a rough copy. Remember, the purpose of the rough copy is you have to try and put it in your own words so that you don't use the exact copy of the direct quote that's in the passage. And then the last thing, Remember as well, after you've written down your 7 facts in your rough draft, count the number of words you've used to see if you are within the limited number of words. And then go and take a look. If you use too many words, if you used, for example, 80 words, go and see, look at every fact you wrote down. And then you ask yourself, is this an example? Is this a fact? Am I repeating something? And if you find something like that, then you realize, then you take it out, because then it's unnecessary words that you waste. And remember, 1 fact per sentence. If you see and, then it normally means you are introducing a second fact. The last thing I want to mention about the summary is that if it's difficult for you, then rather quote. It's not preferred. We do not want you to do it because you're going to lose unnecessary marks. But if you struggle to put it in your own words, remember, everything doesn't have to be in your own words. You can just change a word here and there. Then it's not a direct quote anymore. And then you can still score marks for language. And the last thing is, you cannot change the meaning. The meaning has to stay exactly the same. And you can't think of your own ideas in order to write down what you should do to save water, for example. It has to come from the passage. And that is the summary. I believe that you will do well. If we come back, there's going to be a break. If we come back, then we'll tackle the rest of the question paper. If you have, by any chance, if there's a question, I believe that there's a way in which you can ask me a question. And then remember, the reason why I'm not actually doing the summary or the comprehension test, this is just a guideline to help you. How do you tackle the question paper when you get it on Monday, when you open it on Monday? And I believe that you have done many examples during the course of the year. And over the weekend, to practice, go and take some of them and try to do them again. And use some of the tips that I've advised you, that I've given you now, that you should do. Remember the last thing about the summary that I almost forgot to say. It's important to indicate the total number of words you've used at the bottom, at the end of your summary. And remember, we've talked about the rough draft. I've said that you first have to write the rough draft to try and put it and change it so that it's in your own words, and to make sure that you are within 70 words so that you don't use too many words. When you are happy with that and you have everything, then you go and you write it over neatly for the marker so that the marker won't struggle identifying the facts that you've identified. And another piece of advice, I'm full of advice today, is that you take your ruler and your pen and draw a line through your summary. Just cancel it out so that people know that they do not need to mark it. And that is the summary. The rest of the question paper is visual literacy, cartoons and advertisements, and then language skills, editing and other grammatical skills that you need to know. If we just quickly wanted to turn the page. Okay. Or everything that includes, you will notice that the whole question paper has texts. The comprehension passage is the comprehension section is going to have 2 texts. The summary has a text, and then you get the language section that will also have at least 3 or 4 texts. One text will be the advertisement, one text will be the cartoon, and then you will get a passage that you have to edit, and where you will have to answer questions in context, language questions in context. And that's how language is used, and how we use language. It's not on a little island, and that's why they provide you with texts. Every text has a purpose. It was written for a specific purpose. And if you can identify that purpose, it will help you ultimately in answering the questions that you need to answer. If you look at advertisements, the purpose of any advertisement, it doesn't matter what the company is, who the company is, it doesn't matter what the product is, they want to make money. They want to sell something. They either want to sell a product, or they want to sell a service, and sometimes they want to bring something under your attention, or to your attention, so that you will ultimately that you will support them. And that's the purpose of an advertisement. So all advertisements are designed to do that. They want to convince you to support their product, to support their purpose, or to support their service. And that is the purpose of an advertisement. So whatever the advertisement is that you're going to get, if it's for toothpaste, or if it is for a car that you have to buy, or if it's for a plumbing service that you have to use, or if they just want to give you information that they want you to sign a petition to, they want support, then remember that's the purpose. They want your support in some way, to support the product, to support the service, or to support the cause that they stand for. And that's the advertisement. When we come back, we will take a look at some advertising techniques and how you have to keep that in mind when you're answering questions on advertisements. Okay, welcome back. There was a question during the break that asked if it's necessary to write a second draft. Now, for a summary, I don't think it's necessary, and also because your time is limited. The purpose of the first draft is just to put the words in, try to change the facts so that it's in your own words, and also to make sure that you are within the 70, the limit, the maximum limit that they give you. Otherwise, if you immediately start writing this final copy and you realize, oh, I made a mistake, I have to change words, then it's going to be messy and it's going to be difficult to mark. So that's why we advise you to just write the first draft. So you write your first draft, change the facts into your own words, count the number of words. If you have time and you feel you want to do it again, then you're welcome to write a second draft. But I think from that first draft, you can change everything you need to change on that. And from that, you just write it over neatly, a final copy that for the marker to mark. So it's not really necessary for a second draft. As I say, I'm just warning you that you will, the whole time, that you will keep your eye on the time and remind yourself how much time you have left, that you do not spend too much time on the summary, because then you're going to miss out on a lot of language questions that you might have been able to answer. Okay, right, now we've finished with section A and with section B of the question paper, and now we're going to go to section C, the language section, the section that I personally like the most. Now, first of all, I said that the first language section, question 3 and question 4, is visual literacy. Now, visual literacy includes cartoons and includes advertisements, as you know by this stage. And just before the break, I talked a little bit about the purpose of an advertisement. You have to keep that in mind the whole time when you analyze the advertisement and when you answer questions on the advertisement. Now, remember, they're not trying to trick you. The information is there. And you just have to use a little bit of your own information and your own knowledge and put yourself in the shoe of the consumer. Remember, they might use an advertisement for something that you're not interested in, that you're definitely not going to buy. For example, they might advertise diapers, nappies, baby nappies. You don't have a baby. You're not interested in buying the nappies. Or, for example, they advertise dog food, pet food. You don't have a pet, so you're not interested in it. So you have to try and put yourself in the shoes of the pet owner who would want to buy food for his pet, or in the shoes of a mother who has a baby and you will have to be able to buy nappies. What do you want? What will you be looking for? What will the advertiser have to do to convince you that their product is the best, that you will rather go out and buy their product? So that's what you need to do the whole time. Think of what is the purpose. And if I were in need of this product, would this advertisement convince me to go out and buy it? Okay, now we're going to use this. I don't know if some of you have already done this at school, that your teacher used the March 2014 exam paper as a tool to teach. I'm just going to use this as a guideline again. So I apologize for that, but I'm sure that you will still be able to just refresh your memory from it. Now, the first thing that you do when you open it at the advertisement is you look at it, right? Immediately, the first thing that my eye sees is the visuals. In other words, the pictures. I immediately see this, and that tells me what this product is. It's Sensodyne, Repair and Protect. And Sensodyne, those of you who don't know, if you don't know what it is, okay, there I see it's a tooth, so it's a clue, it's something I have to do with teeth. But if you go and read, then you will know exactly what it is. So don't be thrown and feel uncomfortable and stressed out and panicky if you get an advertisement and you don't have a clue what the product is. Go and read. It will give you information. It will tell you. So here I see there's a picture of a man. So he has to be somebody important if they put his face in the advertisement. And here again is another visual describing, illustrating something, and there's the tooth again, another clue. So now if we read toothpaste that helps repair sensitive teeth, no wonder dentists recommend it. So there you know what Sensodyne is. Sensodyne is toothpaste. And not just any toothpaste. They give you information. Sensitive, and they say repair. And then they say dentists recommend. Now that sometimes the examiners tend to make that a question. Because a dentist will be an expert in the field of teeth, on how to look after your teeth. They will know what to do. So if they have the knowledge and they know what to do and they recommend, they give their stamp of approval to this toothpaste, then it means it has to be good. So they normally ask, why would they include this recommendation of the dentist? And that is normally to convince the reader that, that you can believe it, that this person knows what he's talking about. He knows teeth, he knows what's necessary to look after your teeth. So then it makes it more believable. And that's a word that you can learn, believable. Right, because ultimately an advertisement has to be believable. Then it is a successful advertisement. Okay, then you go and you read the occasional twinge you get when you drink something cold means a specific area of the tooth is vulnerable. Okay, drink something cold, specific area, and then the word vulnerable. Vulnerable might be something that might be a word that might be difficult to some of the learners. Now you can help repair that area with a new kind of toothpaste. Okay, so there, it's new. Okay, new Sensodyne Repair and Protect seeks out and helps repair sensitive areas using the same minerals teeth are made of. Okay, that's also something that draws my attention. Same minerals teeth are made of. So in other words, it's something natural, it's something organic, it's not something that will be bad for you ultimately in any way. Brush twice a day, every day, and stay protected. All of us want to be protected in all different ways, so even our teeth wants to be protected. Okay, and here the picture of this person. This breaks new ground for toothpaste. I recommend it. Mark Hughes, dentist, London. So who is this guy? Why did they put his picture here? He's a dentist. And as I said there at the beginning, at the top, dentists recommend it. So he's an expert. He knows about teeth. So if he gives it his stamp of approval, then it means you can believe it. It makes it, I said the word, believable. Okay, and that's why it will be a good advertisement. Now, Sensodyne, #1 dentist recommended brand for sensitive teeth. So again, of all the dentists that they asked, all the dentists mentioned this brand first. Okay, brand. So the name of the brand, it's toothpaste. You get Colgate, you get Aquafresh. The brand of this toothpaste, Sensodyne. Okay, and then they have two little asterisks here. And they say clinically proven relief with twice daily brushing. So remember, this toothpaste is for sensitive teeth. If you drink something very cold and your teeth aches and there's a sharp pain, they say it has been proven clinically in a laboratory. They tried it, they tested it on people. So they have proof that it does work. Only by brushing your teeth twice daily. Okay, and then they say Touchstone research results, February 2012. So research has been done. And that research, the results of that research, and means it's clinically proven. And that means you can believe it. They have scientific facts to stand on. And what does it do? It once again makes it more believable. Okay, now when you get an advertisement, this is basically what you do. You look at it. What is the product? What's the brand? You read through it. You look at information. I have repair and sensitive. I got this piece. Dentist. There's an expert, somebody who has knowledge that recommends it. I hear that it's a new kind of toothpaste. It's something natural. It's made out of the same minerals as my teeth. It protects, right? It will stay protected every day. And then hear what the dentist said. And then this just makes it more believable that there's scientific proof, that they've done research, and also that of all the dentists they asked, that they all mentioned Sensodyne as number 1. So then you've looked at it. You haven't looked at the question yet, but now you have a good idea what this advertisement is about. So you could have asked yourself some questions while we did this. For example, who is the target audience? The target audience, the target market, that means the people whom they want to get up out of their chair, go to the shop and buy this toothpaste. In other words, who will be interested in buying it? First of all, you need teeth, okay? So then you will be interested in this toothpaste. But not all people will use Sensodyne. If you have healthy teeth, then you won't need this. If you have sensitive teeth, in other words, you have those sharp pains when you drink something cold or something hot, you will be interested. So there you limit the target market. Everybody who's interested in having healthy teeth. But you can limit it further. You can narrow it down further. For example, now we can say people who want healthy teeth and who are suffering from sensitive teeth. In other words, they have sensitive teeth. Okay, so there you have the target audience. Okay, now I'm just going to put that to one side and look at the questions. I haven't looked at the questions yet, but guess what is the first question? Who is the target market of this advertisement? In other words, who do they want? At whom are they aiming at? Who do they want? Which consumer do they want to buy this product? And so now you think there will be people with teeth, people who want to protect their teeth, but most of all people with sensitive teeth. Okay, so there you have the answer to the first question. It only counts 1 mark. So it's not necessary to write that much. Now the next question, in the context of this advertisement, the word twinge means. Okay, now we have to go and look for the word twinge. Where do they use the word twinge? The occasional twinge you get when you drink something cold. And that is a pain, right? So it's let's see the option. So if you drink something cold and that hurts. Okay, so a shout, a pain, a damage, or a thirst. It's definitely not a thirst because you're busy drinking something in the context of this advertisement. Okay, you might shout out, but a twinge is not sharp enough for a loud shout. Okay, there is damage, and because of the damage, there's a twinge. Okay, so the most obvious one then, if we eliminate, it's a pain. It's a sharp little pain. According to this advertisement, what can cause dental sensitivity? Okay, dental sensitivity and what? And then the important thing, cause. So what can cause this? So now we have to go and take a look. What can cause dental sensitivity? You drink something cold, you can repair the area, repair sensitive areas using the same minerals teeth are made of. Toothpaste that helps repair sensitive teeth, the dentists recommend it. This breaks new ground for toothpaste, I recommend it. Daily brushing sensitive teeth. So, what can cause sensitivity? The only thing that I can pick up here is there. The fact that you consume or that you drink, what caused that dental sensitivity? Something that's extremely cold, and then perhaps sometimes something that's extremely hot as well. So I think that is the cause of the twinge. And what is the twinge? The twinge means your teeth is sensitive. And what causes it to be sensitive? something that is very cold. Okay, and it can also be, it happens when people neglect their teeth, if they don't brush their teeth regularly. And you also get this from the advertisement. If you look at, you have to brush it twice a day. Again, here, twice daily brushing. So look after the teeth. So I would say, if I were to answer this question, things that are cold, if you consume things that are cold, and then it's also enhanced by the fact that you don't look after your teeth, you don't brush your teeth regularly. Okay, name one technique the advertiser uses to attract the reader's attention. Okay, immediately I want to show you. I want to show you that the techniques for advertisements. Now, color, in the normal world we live in, using color in an advertisement is a technique. But remember, you're going to get a question paper that looks like this. It's black and white, so you can't write down color. Okay, remember that, because I can't see any color here. So the first thing, the advertising techniques, that means things that draws your attention. That will normally be pictures or images, any visual thing like a picture. Then we talk about font. Font is the types of letters that they use. Now, if you look at this advertisement, the letters aren't all the same size. Those letters are bigger. These are a little bit smaller. These are even smaller. Okay, here the name of the toothpaste, that's bigger again. So the font, the type of letter. And sometimes the letters don't look the same. Sometimes they are bold and dark. Sometimes they are in italics. Sometimes it's a different type of writing. So the font. And there we look at different types of letters. We look at bold and italic. We look at capital letters and lowercase letters, small letters. And then also the last thing, oops, now I've forgotten the different types. Oh, the size of the letters. That's font. And that's all by using the different things. That's how they try to attract the reader's attention. Okay, then they normally have things like slogans and the logo. Now, in this advertisement, the logo you normally find, if you look at the advertisement, the logo you normally find in the right-hand corner of the advertisement. And the slogan will be just above it or just below it. Now, here in this case, they didn't use the logo is here on the box of the toothpaste, that tooth, okay? And then the slogan will be repair and protect. Okay, so those are things that advertising techniques. So if they ask you a question, what advertising techniques did they use in this advertisement? Then remember, it's to attract the reader's attention. So you're going to take a look at that. And then any answer, if you said they use different pictures, they use the picture of the the box of the toothpaste, they use the photograph of the dentist, and then they use this image of the tooth. So that's pictures. So they use that to attract attention. Then also they use different font sizes. Some are bigger, some are smaller. And there you already mentioned 2, and you only needed to mention 1 for a mark. Okay, sometimes they use the information as well. The information can also attract attention. Okay, if you're interested in it, obviously you will be attracted to it. Sometimes an advertisement has a headline. This one doesn't have one, but they have a catchy headline, and that's normally big and bold and dark at the top, something short, and that you read. And immediately if you turn the magazine, your eye will be attracted to that. It will draw your eye. So that can also be a headline, a heading or a headline. So those are all things that an advertiser can use, techniques, methods that they use to attract the reader's attention. Okay, now the next one. Why has the advertiser included mark, use, picture, and comment? Remember when I said before we even looked at the questions, when we just started looking at the advertisement, when we read this, no wonder dentists recommend, and I said They normally make questions of that. And here we have a picture of Mark Hughes. He's a dentist. What is his comment? This breaks new ground for toothpaste. In other words, it's a new way to protect your teeth, a new way to repair your teeth. Now the question is, why has the advertiser included Mark Hughes' picture and comment? It counts 2 marks. Okay, how are you going to get those 2 marks? Remember what I said, a dentist is an expert. He has expert knowledge. He has a lot of knowledge about it. Okay, and why do they give us this dentist who has knowledge? Because it will be easier for you to believe that person if they say that it's a good product. And there you have 2 marks. So remember, if they ask you any question about why did they include the expert or the name of the doctor or the name of the scientist or the name of the researcher, then it is because they have expert knowledge, they have good knowledge, they know what they're talking about. And then why do they include it? Because it makes it believable. It's easier for the reader to believe a dentist than just an ordinary person on the street. So there you have your 2 marks. So there, and I can guarantee, I don't want to say I can guarantee you, but I think I would bet on it that they will ask you in this visual literacy analyzing an advertisement, they will ask you the question on the target market, they will ask you a question on the advertising techniques, and if they choose an advertisement that includes an expert opinion, they will ask you that question to make it more believable. Okay, we're almost finished. How does the main picture support the text of the advertisement? How does the main, in what way, if you ask how, in what way does the main picture support? Now remember what support. Support means it helps, right? It makes something stronger. If you are struggling and I support you, I'm helping you, I'm making you stronger. So now they ask you, how does this main picture, what do you think is the main picture? The biggest picture, and that's that. How does that support make what is written, the text, stronger? Now remember what we read here. If you have a twinge, you drink something cold, there's a specific area of your tooth. Not the whole tooth, a specific area of your tooth that's vulnerable. In other words, that's a little bit weaker. Now you can help repair that area with a new kind of toothpaste. New Sensodyne Repair and Protect seeks out and helps repair sensitive areas. So how does this picture support that? There you see whatever is in the toothpaste, right? The minerals and the things that are in the toothpaste. Where does it go? It goes to a specific area on the tooth. And that's how it supports the message, because it shows that it focuses on a specific area of the tooth, the piece that is vulnerable, the piece that is sensitive. So the picture supports this, helps this, illustrates it so that we understand it better and to make it more believable as well. Okay, so there you have the answer to that question. And then the last one, oh, here we get that level 5 questions. In your view, what does that mean? In your opinion. In other words, they want to ask you, what do you think about this? Are the claims made about the product realistic or is it exaggerated? Now, what claims are made about this product? In other words, a claim is basically a promise they make. This product can do this. We guarantee it, we promise it. What claim does this product make? That it will repair, it will help to repair sensitive teeth. So that if you had a sensitive area and you used to drink something cold and it was that twinge. Now if you use this, the claim it makes it will basically heal it, it will take it away, it will make it better. Now they ask you, do you think that claim that it's realistic? Is it possible that that can be true? Or do you think it's exaggerated? It perhaps works, but not as quickly as this, not only by brushing twice a day. It's a little bit too good to be true. So now you have to give your opinion. But now you also have to be realistic when you write down your answer. Even if you don't use this brand of toothpaste, even if you never had sensitive teeth, remember what I said? You have to put yourself in the shoes of a person who will be interested in this. And then you give your answer. So you can say, obviously the first thing here you're going to say is, it's realistic. Or you can say, it's exaggerated. But now the marks, it counts 2 marks. 2 marks are allocated to it. Those 2 marks will be awarded for why do you say it's realistic? Why do you say it's exaggerated? Okay, so, and that has to be good enough. Remember, if you write it down, it has to be complete. It has to be understandable. It has to be logic. Okay, and that's a little bit about analyzing an advertisement. It doesn't matter what the questions are. I prove to you now, before I even looked at the questions, I just took this advertisement and I went through it. I looked at certain things and I asked myself, why did they put this in here? Keywords, who would be interested in this? And that's how you analyze an advertisement, so that if you open it up, then you have then you can answer most of the questions. Okay, right. Then we go to the cartoons. But just before we go to the cartoon, there was a question on a summary. In a summary, can I list my own facts even if they are not in the passage? That's a very, very good question. And I've mentioned it, but perhaps I didn't say it clearly enough. No, you cannot. Remember a summary. What is the purpose of a summary? A summary you don't only use in English. If you have life sciences, if you have history, if you have geography, you have a whole textbook and a whole book full of notes. And you have to go and make summaries. What does that mean? You have to go and identify the facts that you have to study in order to answer the questions. You have to be able to lift out the main ideas. So can you go and add your own facts if you summarize your history? No, you have to look at what's in the textbook. The same here. Remember, the summary that we do in English in the language paper is just a little bit of practice to give you the skill in order to be able to identify facts in your other subject. So you can only use the facts that are in the passage. I'm going to repeat it because it's very, very important. You can only use the facts, list the facts that are in the passage. You cannot write down your own facts. Even if you know of, for example, the one that we've been doing about how to save water, what you can do to save water. Even if you know of other things that you can do to save water, if it's not mentioned in that passage, you cannot list it. You're not going to get a mark for it. So that's very important. Only reflect what is mentioned in the passage. I hope that I've answered it loudly and clearly, so that you will identify the facts in the passage that they give you. Okay, right. Now the cartoon, analyzing a cartoon. I found that this is something that's difficult for learners. The advertisement is even a little bit easier, but I found that the cartoons are difficult, and sometimes it is difficult, I admit, because the cartoon characters are drawn in such a way that their facial expressions aren't very clear. And that makes it difficult because there's always a question where they ask you, you have to look at the facial expression and the body language. And then it's difficult to answer if you can't clearly see, but is the person frowning? Are they lifting their eyebrows? Or are they not? Are their eyes wide open? Or is it wide open in all the frames? So I'm just going to give you a few tips. Remember that there are basically 6 facial expressions. Again, before you look at the questions, go and look at the cartoon. And you have to look at everything in this cartoon, because a cartoon is a mixture of the text are the words that the characters are saying, and then also of the picture. What do I see in the picture? Visual. So in other words, without even reading the words, what do I see? What do the pictures tell me? And that is the facial expressions and the body language. And together, the cartoon, together the text and the pictures tells a story. Sometimes it's not even the facial expressions, but the lines that the cartoon artist draws, that he uses to convey a certain message. Now let's see. They normally give you an idea. If you don't know the cartoon, everybody doesn't know all the cartoons and all the cartoon characters. So they have to identify the cartoon characters. So in this case, they say for multiple choice, only write down the question number and the letter you choose. They say this is text E, read it and then answer the questions. Now we have Blondie, we have frame 1, frame 2, frame 3. So the name of the cartoon is Blondie. Now we have here Dean Young and Stan Drake. Now, which one is the name of the cartoon? Without even reading further, which one is printed in bold? Blondie. And what is important, normally the main character will be more important, and that will be printed in bold. So that will be the name of the cartoon artist who sketched this cartoon and also who wrote the text for the cartoon. Okay, here you see note. When you get to the cartoon, always look for this note, because the note will tell you what the cartoon is about. In this cartoon, the man is Dagwood. Strange name, but his name is Dagwood. And the woman next to him is his wife, and her name is Blondie. Okay, now you go and look. Okay, where's the woman? Obviously, here you can't see it clearly, but if you compare the characters there, you can see this person has longer hair, he has shorter hair. So the one on the left will be the man, Dagwood, and the one on the right will be the woman, his wife, Blondie. Okay, now let's take a look. I think I just heard a noise downstairs. There's no more cake left, honey. I ate the last piece before I came to bed. What about that noise downstairs, dear? Oh, it's probably nothing. Okay, now, so obviously there's a noise downstairs. What would be the normal reaction if you are in bed and there's a noise downstairs? You will get out of bed, you will go and take a look, you will phone the police, but you will look for help or you will go and hide. But what does he do? He says, I think I heard a noise downstairs. But she knows her husband. Why do I say that? Because she immediately knows it wasn't a noise. He's just looking for an excuse to go downstairs to eat a piece of cake. But then she gives him the bad news. No more cake. She ate the last piece. Look at his face. Okay? She says, I ate the last piece before I came to bed. Look at how he reacts. And what does he do? He turns on his side and he falls asleep. And now she's up. But what about the noise? What if there's a burglar or somebody getting into the house? And now, oh, it's probably nothing. So that's proof that what he heard here at the beginning was just he was pretending. What was his ultimate goal? What did he want to do? He wanted to go downstairs to find a piece of cake. So that's the words. Now let's take a look at the language, at the body language. There isn't really much body language, right? Here he sits up straight. She's still asleep. She lies down. He's still up straight, but he looks to the front. Here he looks most probably to the sound of the noise, in the direction of the sound of the noise. Okay, here he goes back to sleep. He turns his back on his wife. He's on his side, and he goes back to sleep. But now his wife is worried. What if there was a noise, and she's up, and she's worried about the noise? Okay. So remember, always take a look at the context of the cartoon, right? The context of the cartoon. And then look at the meaning of it. Then look at things that support this idea. Look at his face. Here, all of it is basically the same. But here you can say, what? He's perhaps disappointed. He feels a little bit discouraged that he wanted some cake and now there isn't any cake left. So always look for everything. In this specific cartoon, there isn't much movement lines. They didn't include a lot of movement lines. And they didn't all, there's not a lot of facial expressions, perhaps only here. But why? What if you can't really see it, then look at the words. What does it mean? What, do you think he really heard a noise? No. That tells me he didn't hear a noise. He wanted cake. He's disappointed. And so you take everything, the whole cartoon into consideration in order to get to that, what is his facial expression, if his facial expression isn't clear. We're almost out of time, and I most probably spoke too much about the advertisements, but I told you that this is the section of the question paper that I personally like the best, and I like the most. I just want to quickly go, so remember when you get the cartoon, go and look at the words, go and look at everything in the picture. Look at their body language. Look at how are they upright? Are they slouching? Are they lying down? Are they standing up? Are they turning their back on somebody? Do they look the person in the eye? Look at all of that. and then you take what they say, the actual words into the consideration. And it's almost like a calculation. You put 2 and 2 together. So you have to put all of that together in order to get the correct message. Lastly, I just want to say something about the editing skills. These are the first few questions where they make a deliberate error. If I can give you advice, because this is the section where learners struggle the most, go and look for things like words that you confuse. For example, there, spelled like that, and there. You get words like whole. These are just examples. But if you read the sentence looking for the mistake, see if there isn't something that can be confused. Okay. Then the next thing is concord. Go and look at concord. Concord is where the subject and the verb agrees in number. That means if it's one person doing the thing, the verb should be singular. It should have an S somewhere. If it is more than one person doing the thing, then the verb shouldn't have an S. The verb should be plural. That's concord. Then you go and look at, is it in the same tense? Now, tenses is something terrible, but do they keep in the same tense? If they start in the present tense, then the rest of the sentence should also be in the present tense. If they start in the past tense, the rest of the sentence should also be in the past tense. And those are a few, the last thing, apostrophe. Did they put an apostrophe where there should be an apostrophe, or did they put the apostrophe in the wrong place? Those are a few things. If I were to answer this question, those are the things that I will be on the lookout, especially if you're not sure, if you don't know if it's a mistake or not. If you're not good at spelling, there might be a spelling mistake. But don't always first look for spelling. There might be other things. First go and look for words that can be confused, right? Then go and look for concord. Is it singular? Is it plural, the verb? Then go and look for tense. If they start in the present tense, all the verbs have to be in the present tense. Stick to the same tense. And then look for apostrophe. If there's an apostrophe somewhere in that sentence, is it in the right place? Did they use it correctly? If not, then you know that's the error. These are just a few things that I normally teach my learners to first take a look at. And if it's not one of these things, then you have to go and search further. It won't be something like commas. It won't be a glaring punctuation marks. It has to be something very serious like a capital letter, a name that's not written in a capital letter, or that there should be a question mark and there isn't a question mark. It will be more language you have to do with the words, that they use the correct word. Is it spelled correctly? Is it in the correct tense? And then just the last bit of advice that I would give you before the weekend, when you look at your old papers and the work you did during the year, the rest of the language of this section is things like question tag, negative, question, active and passive, reported speech. There will be a question on that. So if you can do that, you will at least have about 5 marks that you already have in the pocket. So if you don't understand it yet, spend some time on that over the weekend. I wish you all the best, grade 12s. It's the beginning, the start of your exam, and I know that you're going to work hard and that all the hard work that you've put in during the course of the year, that you will reap the fruits at the end when you get your results. And remember, if you get a question or there's a word that you do not know the meaning of, don't panic. They always give you clues. Go and look at other words surrounding it. Go and read the sentence and see if you can't figure out what it means. Remember, then it's only one question. There are still many other questions that you can answer. And remember, the last thing that I want to advise you on is keep your eye on the time. You have 2 hours time to complete this paper. Be careful of spending either too much time on the comprehension, but most of all, too much time on the summary. A bit of advice. If you are a slow worker, you normally struggle to get finished in 2 hours. I would advise you to start with the language section. Just number it clearly, section C. Or leave open pages and then you do that. Do the summary last, because sometimes the summary takes most of the time. If you see you've done your comprehension, you've done your language, and you only have a little bit of time left for your summary, then you know you're not even going to do a rough draft. You're just going to write down facts so that there's something. It's better than not getting finished. So I hope that whatever I said today, that there might have been some useful tips that you will remember, and that you will that will help you on Monday when you are writing this exam. And again, I wish you all the best and good luck with the rest of your exam.